Okay, hello everybody again. I'm going to do a little step or a little demo here on how I do my ballasting with the Woodland Scenics ballast and the Kato Unitrack. And this track again has been already weathered. The rails have been painted, and I've done some gray and black washes on the track itself to weather the ties. Now I'm going to go ahead and start gluing down the ballast on this little section of track right in here. The key thing with the Unitrack is that since it is plastic, if you pile up the ballast on it in one go and then apply your maybe an alcohol wetting agent and then some glue, it does tend to really roll off a lot on the edges. And so the first step that I do is to take this regular Elmer's white glue, and I basically paint the edges of the ballast, of the plastic ballast, and then apply a first coat of ballast to that painted area. So I'll go ahead and quickly paint on the glue to this little section here on both sides of the track. And I'll also go ahead and put some on the surrounding scenery here. And I am going to work it up right to the ties. In fact, I'll take a little micro brush and kind of work it in between ties as well. Since this is a small layout, I am taking a little bit more care than I would if it was a larger layout in terms of getting everything glued and trying to take care to make sure that everything is being done pretty neatly. So now I'll take a little micro brush and I'll do some more glue between the tie areas. This doesn't have to be perfect. The whole idea is that you want to get a layer of ballast that is glued down from underneath, applied to this track first, and then you let that layer of ballast dry. And then once that is in fact dry, maybe the next day or later the day or whatever, it doesn't have to be permanently set really, but just firmly attached, you can go ahead and do your regular ballasting. And the first coat of ballast provides some tooth for the top layer of ballast to grip onto, and your ballast won't really wash off when you go ahead and start applying glue with an eyedropper and that kind of thing. So I'm going to kind of get as best as I can here between each of these ties. And it is a little tedious to do that. You don't really have to do it this carefully, but since it's a small layout and I don't have a huge amount of track to do, I can do it that way. Now, what I've also been doing to make things a little bit easier is putting a little bit of glue here between the ties. And this is the only way that I'm actually gluing the ballast to the areas between the ties. You can just apply the ballast down loose and then try to glue it down with a wash or with an eyedropper and glue that way like you would normally do it. And it works, but then you tend to get with the Woodland Scenics ballast being pretty lightweight, it does tend to float a little bit, and you get more ballast granules up on top of your ties and up against your rail and that kind of thing. And so if you just kind of quickly go through and apply a little bit of glue between each section, you can put sprinkle your ballast down, and got a little bit on the tie there, just or on the rail, wipe that off. It'll stick nicely. And what I've been generally doing is trying to make the ballast color be a very close match to what the color of the plastic Unitrack is after it's been weathered with the washes. And so this way, the areas that show through on the in terms of the plastic aren't really visible because they're basically the same color as the ballast is. So now I'll just take a light sprinkling of the ballast and sprinkle that where I've applied the glue. And then what I'll do is come back, and there's clearly ballast on the ties and things like that. But because the glue isn't there, it'll just vacuum right off. And so I'll just take a little portable vacuum cleaner and vacuum off the ballast that I don't want. I can just shake this on here, but I'm just trying to keep it pretty light since, again, most of this won't really stay there. It'll all be vacuumed off. So anyway, that's the first coat. And once this dries, it can be vacuumed off. And see if I can move the camera here. And you end up getting something that looks like what I have here on this section of the upper level, which I did that to. So you have basically a layer of I didn't put the ballast in between the ties yet at this point, but you can see how you have this layer of ballast that is stuck onto the sides of the Unitrack, and that's on there good. So now when we pile up our next layer of ballast on top of that, it'll basically stay on there well, and you won't have the ballast washing off as easily. Okay, so now this section of track that we were working on before putting on the first layer of ballast is dry, and I've gone ahead and vacuumed off all the loose ballast. So the ballast is now in between the ties in this section, and that's complete. And then there is also a layer of ballast on either side of the track that has been glued to the ballast, and that will provide the tooth that'll make it easier to keep the second layer of ballast in place and prevent it from sliding off as much. So now we'll just take our ballast and we'll go ahead and apply a second layer to the edge. And you can use a brush or whatever you want to help shape the ballast profile, and I just usually use my fingers. Go ahead and do this section in here. Let's use a brush to kind of help get the ballast off the ends of the ties a little bit. And if you don't do that now, you can always come back and scrape it off after the glue is dried. What you don't want to do, though, is go back and scrape it or try to scrape it off after you put the glue down before the glue is dried, so you end up just making a big mess, typically. But now that that's in place, we'll go through and put down or dribble some alcohol on this section of ballast. I'm just using regular isopropyl alcohol. And you can make wet water using water and dish detergent and that kind of thing, but the alcohol is just a little bit easier since it's already, ready to go right out of the bottle. And the alcohol doesn't have the surface tension that water does, and so it'll soak right into the ballast immediately. And by getting the ballast wet, when you put the layer of glue down, which is largely water, it'll be able to soak right in, and the surface tension won't keep it from beating it, or it won't beat up from the surface tension by having the ballast already wet with the alcohol. So now that is wet with the alcohol, we'll go ahead and dribble on our layer of scenic cement. You can use glue and water mixed up or whatever else you want to use. I'm just using this because it's convenient. If you had a lot of track to do, it would be cheaper to make up your own. But I won't even use this whole bottle on this small layout, so the cost really isn't that big of a concern when you're doing a small amount. And the main thing you have to do is just be patient and dribble it on very slowly. If you try to put too much on at one time, you are going to end up washing out the ballast, and you'll leave, big holes and stuff where the glue just washed out and flushed the ballast downhill. Just gently dribble it so one drop at a time hits it and it doesn't cause too big of a flood. And you do want to soak it pretty thoroughly with the glue. If you don't, what'll happen is you'll end up getting the top layer of ballast glued, but there won't be enough glue to penetrate all the way to the bottom of the ballast layer, and you may end up with a loose layer in between that isn't fully glued. And so if you get a hard knock on the ballast, you bump it with something, you may end up knocking a chunk off, and then you have some loose ballast underneath, and that ends up being kind of a mess. So plenty of glue, but not too much, not enough to where you're washing the ballast out. And again, because we do have that layer underneath that's been glued down already, that does also help secure things as well. And the alcohol that soaks down through the ballast will help loosen up that glue a little bit, and that'll re-solidify on some of the ballast that's towards the bottom. And I like to go through and just, you don't really need to do this, but I like to go through and just sprinkle a little bit of ballast on top, since this will soak in some of the glue as well. And maybe I'm just trying to get any areas that may have been just washed off a little bit, or maybe aren't quite as even as some of the other areas, and I can kind of fill in the little gaps that I want to fill in at this point. And then this ballast will basically soak up some of the glue and get bonded in place with everything else. And then once all this is dry, I'll come back and run a vacuum over everything and get up everything that isn't fully secure. And if there is, for whatever reason, a section that gets vacuumed up because it wasn't glued down well enough, I can go back and finish up that section. So anyway, that's pretty much all there is to it. And once that's dry, again, you'll end up with something that looks pretty much like this section right here, which has been already completed. And again, it does look pretty good. If you do the weathering of the ties using the washes of gray and black and whatever other color you might want to do, and then go ahead and paint the rails and then do the ballasting, Unitrack looks really good, for being Unitrack. So maybe not perfect like it might be with FlexTrack, but again, it's pretty nice overall. So it does take some time, but the key with ballasting, either Unitrack or any kind of track, is to do it in sections. Don't try to do too much at one time. I basically do maybe a foot, if that, every evening. Maybe I'll do it twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, and just try to work on it little by little. And so the idea is that you don't want to do too much ballasting at one time. You can just find your limit, because you don't want to get to the point where you're rushing things and not getting the result that you're wanting. But anyway, that's all for now. So thanks for watching. Bye.